Alright guys, this is Catfish Todd. Second straight day I've got to come out and see what kind of luck I can have as I don't know if you can see it in the video. It's sprinkling, ain't really raining too hard, but 70 to 80% chance of storms today, so hit or miss. So it's gonna rain some, then be sunshine and rain some more, so figured it'd be a good day to come out here. Overcast, temperatures are gonna be a little about 7-8 degrees cooler than they had been this past week. Yesterday I came out for about maybe 5.5 hours. Had 3 runs and also I had me a brim on here, but I lost it. Anyways, I had me 3 runs yesterday and connected on one. I uploaded the video. It was, if I remember right, it was 23.5 pounds. Caught it on a body section of a brim, cut brim on a billy bob float. I don't typically fish my floats when it starts getting warm, but I wasn't getting any bites, and I just decided to switch it up. I had a run within the first hour and a half on my bait caster, and it ran and it ran and it ran. And on the bait caster that I'm using, it's a lever action, so I leave the spool open and push the cooker button on, and I usually let those run a good bit, because if you go and try to set it quick, you'll pull it out of their mouth. I let it run for probably 5 to 10 seconds, and then I just started reeling down on it, and I felt the pressure, and then it popped loose. Felt like it was going to be a good one, but I didn't get it, and then a couple hours later, I didn't get any bites. I decided to break out the old float and went down and just really fished the corner of the dam. I was fishing at about 7 to 8 feet deep. I made one casted it out maybe 7 yards. I mean, it wasn't far off the bank, but there's a bunch of brush in that corner. It's got some tall pines that hang over the edge of it. That gives it some shade, and sometimes I have some luck down there, sometimes I don't, but it's got good cover. And as soon as that thing hit the water, it was gone. So I must have I guess I must have threw it right in front of it, because I mean, it wasn't in the water 2 seconds and it was gone. And it was 23.5 pounds, blue cat off a body section of a brim. But I kind of wanted to get into what I did yesterday and then what I'm doing today. So yesterday it was hot and sunshiny. It was hot and sunshiny, right at 90 degrees. It's starting to rain pretty good now, but so when it starts getting warm like that, I like to try to get into a little bit deeper water if I can, because when it gets around 90 degrees, those banks heat up pretty quick, and I like to fish shallow in the springtime. But I would say we're officially in summer now. I mean, mid 80s to 90s is summertime. So I started fishing deep yesterday. Like I said, I had a couple runs, didn't connect on any of them. The only one I caught was shallow, and that kind of threw me off, because I didn't think they would be that shallow still. But it's that in-between time. Once July hits, you can catch them shallow early in the morning sometimes, and then obviously late at night. But in the daytime, they're gonna find cooler water. So you can still fish the same way. Cut bait, brim, bluegill, man, whatever you can catch. But I did order some frozen skipjack. I don't like to use, I know it's going to be older, I don't like to use older bait, but skipjack, and I don't like to pay for bait, but it's been so slow. I want to have a good trip, so at least one day this weekend. So I ordered some skipjack, and I'm gonna go down to Santee Cooper and see if I can snag me some pretty good flatheads. I'm really going after flatheads down there, but if I get on some blues, that'll be fine. But anyway, so yesterday was hot. I tried deep water, didn't work. Minus that one run, but put my float on, cast it shallow water, and caught a 23.5 pound blue cat. The video is uploaded. Should be on there now. I just uploaded it. But today, as you can see, where I'm fishing, it's raining, and you know, I've had really good success in the rain. You know, I try to find me a place. You know, where I'm at right now, I'm up under some trees, so I don't really get too wet. I'm not going to stand out in the open and get soaked. But either way, on rainy days, as long as the pressure's not too high. Right now it's 30.03, which is fine. The low is going to be 29.99. That's fine. Dew points is 77. That's slightly high, but that shouldn't affect them too much. But I've always had success fishing when it's raining. I mean, I fished in some monsoons and just caught a ton of catfish. I think, you know, just gets them stirred up, and it's washing bait just on the banks like crickets and ants and worms and stuff. It's washing them back into the water, and I think it's getting them stirred around. But generally in the rain, I'm going to stick to my guns, do what I always do. Whether it's with a float or fishing the bottom, I don't really change anything up other than finding a dry spot and then being able to find a spot where you can get to your rods quick enough. But you know, when it's raining, you know, if you can find you a dry spot, go out there and go after them, because honestly, I've caught more. My best fishing trip was in the rain. Earlier this year, we had about 4 straight days. It actually flooded. We had a lot of floods around where I live at. But I came out one day, and I mean, it was just an absolute monsoon. I caught 9 in about 2.5 hours, with the smallest one being 16, the biggest one being 32. So it was a good day. I came out the next day. Wasn't quite raining as hard, but it was still raining pretty good, and caught 5. So yeah, like today, this weather has really cooled the temperatures down, and you know, I'm hoping to get on some. I believe they're still spawning, because it seems that when I do catch them, I'm catching them quick. And what I mean by quick is they're, you know, my bait's not in the water after the cast more than 5 minutes. So I'm throwing them, you know, around where they're at. I don't think they're really out moving around the lake too much right now. You know, because yesterday when I threw the float out, like I said, it wasn't in the water 2 seconds. So I mean, I really just had to throw that body section just right in front of that fish. But you know, today I'm fishing with fresh brim that I caught yesterday. I kept it on ice. Hoping to do pretty good. I still would love to catch one live on video. I'm looking at my rods, waiting for one to take it. I'd like to catch one live to kind of show you how I set the hook on them, because there is an art to it. You know, it's not hard, but you know, when you get a bite, you know, you don't have to go straight after the hook set. You know, let it take it. A lot of times, now blues are more of a aggressive fish. Once they decide to hit it, they hit it for the most part. Sometimes they may play with it, but I would say 90% of the times when a blue cat hits it or goes after it, it's aggressively. Now flatheads, they'll sit there for, you know, I battled one for 20 minutes just playing with it until it finally took it. And I've had some battle, you know, just play with the bait for 15-20 minutes and never take it. So but you know, today's is blue cat day for me. Like I said, I'm in a section where I usually just catch blues. Every once in a while, you know, during the daytime, I'll sneak a flathead in, but for the most part, it's blues. And you know, this lake's fun. It's you know, I'm averaging, I don't know, I would say between 20 to 25 pounds. Is about the average blue that I'll catch out of here, with my biggest being 48. And I know they got some bigger ones in here because I've seen some guys pop out some 60s out of here. And this is right around the dam. The dam's calm right now. We haven't had no rain, no, you know, or no substantial rain in a week or two. So there's really no current. That's why I came down here. I try not to fish waters that has, you know, I don't like fishing waters with too much current, because then you got to really put a lot of weight on it. It just kind of, it's harder to tell when you get a bite. And obviously if you get a bigger one on there, you're gonna know. But either way, fishing in the rain, you know, it's a good time to fish, really for anything. I mean, bass, which I don't do much of, but you know, like I said, today I've got 3 rods out. All 3 of them's got heads on it, brim heads. You know, I caught that one yesterday off the body piece. Early this spring, I was catching everything off of body pieces. I couldn't really get anything to hit the brim heads, and it's kind of flipped on me. Even though I caught one yesterday on the body piece, that was the first one in about 3 weeks I've caught off a body section. Everything's been off the brim heads or bluegill heads. So I can't really tell you one's better than the other right now. It's just, you know, just maybe the way I'm presenting it. When I hook a brim head, I hook it just above the eye. Now I'm using an 8/0 hook. If you're using cut bait, live bait, I really suggest at a minimum a 6/0, but I wouldn't even go that low. I'm using an 8/0 hook, Team Catfish. The 6/0s, you know, I've caught, you know, catfish on them with cut bait and live, you know, and live bait, but I've also missed a lot because a lot of the hook's not exposed, and it's easy for you to jerk it out of their mouth when you go to set the hook. So I would highly recommend an 8/0 Team Catfish circle hook. You can get them at Walmart. Obviously, you can order them online. They're a little more expensive than your regular circle hooks, but they're thicker. And I just, you know, really don't miss many with them, especially once I get the hook set. I really don't miss any. But that's the key to catching catfish, is properly setting the hook. So right now I got 3 rods in the water, 2 open faces that I have my drag set. If I used a scale 1 to 10 on a 5, so it's gonna, you know, if one hits one of those open faces, it's gonna pull some drag. My lever action bait caster, I got the spool wide open with the clicker on. I don't really like doing that. The main reason is it's just free, you know, he can pull as much as he wants because I got the spool wide open, like I was casting it. And then, you know, when you go to reel it, it locks it back in place. Well, I got it open in the rod stand with the clicker on. And I've noticed, you know, I've lost a few fish fishing that way. But the reason I'm doing that is because I got 2 rods to the right of me that's casted the totally opposite direction, but where I'm fishing at with the bait caster, it's a long run. It's shallow water, but it's a long run from bank to bank right here at the dam. And I just think it's honestly a lot more fun to let that thing run. I don't know if it's hearing that noise of it clicking or what, but I like to let it run for a second. Kind of lets me know how well the fish has got it in its mouth. If you're going to fish that way, Give it, you know, give it 5 to 10 seconds of running. And then at that point, you know, I'm kind of in between of picking the rod up out of the rod holder and setting it. I usually just start reeling. So after it runs for a few seconds, I'll just start cranking down and reeling it. Because after that long of running, either the hook's set somewhere in its mouth or he's done swallowed it. So I'll start reeling down on it. And once I reel it about 5 or 6 times, then I'll pull it up and kind of do a quick pull. You don't want to jerk it. I mean, you don't want to. If you ever watch videos online, especially Catfish Dave, you don't see him picking the rod straight up and just jerking the piss out of it. He'll crank it a few times, he'll reel it, and then he'll pick it straight up, and he'll actually run backwards with it. I'm not that mobile, so I'm not gonna pick mine up and run backwards. But I will pick mine up and just do a gentle pull up on it. That's all you gotta do. And if that sets it as you're reeling it, I do it 2 more times. I'll reel it 4 or 5 times, pop it up, reel it 4 or 5 times, and pop it up. And after that, all I'm focused on is keeping tension on the rod. That's all I'm focused on. So the difference between how I set a hook with the lever action baitcaster and my open faces is my open faces, the drag is on, like I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, I got it set on a 5. It's not gonna pull it as fast as the baitcaster will because I got the spool open on it. Generally with the open faces, they'll run with it. But the way I got them and the rod holders, they're more facing down where my baitcaster's level. So with the open faces facing down, as long as that rod tip isn't doing this, if it's doing this, you know, for a long period of time, I'll go ahead and pick it up. When I say a long period of time, you know, again, 5 to 10 seconds, I'll pick it up and try to set it. But when you know you got one hooked already without even setting it, is when that rod is down and it's staying down. When your rod's doing that, you're good. That shaking, you know, sometimes it can be the hook set, sometimes it's running with it, and it's just got it in its mouth. You go and pick it up and try to set it, you're gonna pull it right out. So what I like to do with the open faces, with these rod holders that I got, which are really cheap ones, I need to invest in some better ones. They're really low to the ground. I'll pick it up and walk backwards with it. I don't want to jerk it because I don't want to jerk it out of its mouth. I'll walk backwards with it. I won't even reel it. I'll just walk backwards with it until I feel the tension of the fish. And once I feel the tension of the fish, then it's just a slight bump up. That usually works for me. That's what Catfish Dave does. That's what a lot of these guys, Kayak, I don't know his name, but you don't see them just gripping and ripping. You'll lose a lot of fish that way. So again, I know it's tempting because especially when you get on a bigger one and it's running, you just want to get over there and get that thing set. Wait just a second, be patient. You can go ahead and get your rod out of the holder. But once you really start feeling that tension where that tip of that rod is not doing this and it's going down and it's staying down, that's when you know you got it. That's when you know it's set. That shaking can be an in between. Obviously, if you got it out of the rod holder, you really don't have much of a choice but to go ahead and try to set the hook, because with you holding it, it's going to feel your tension of you holding the rod once it connects and that line gets straight. So if you do pick it up, you might as well try to set it, but don't jerk it. Walk backwards with it until you can feel the fish on it really good, and just do a little bump and just start reeling. But like I said, on the open face, not the open face, but the bait caster, when it's in the rod stand with the open spool, I'm just cranking that reel about 5 or 6 times, and then I pick the rod up and set the hook. Just some tips to kind of help you not lose as many fish. Because I've seen so many people have some nice fish on the hook and just get up and pull it right out of their mouth. And catfish, they're not like, they don't attack it like a bass does. A lot of people that bass fish, they're just, I've done it, I've bass fished in my time, and you just rip the rod back, That's not how you want to do it in catfish, and you just want to take your time with it. Because if they feel something off, they'll spit it out. And if that hook ain't set, it's easy for them to spit out. But a lot of times when I'm fishing with these rod holders, with these circle hooks, they generally hook themselves. It might not be completely hooked because obviously their mouth has a hard plate, so it might not be penetrated all the way through. But you really want it to the corner of their lip if that's the best way to set it, or have it set. Now obviously you can't control that, but if you ever get one, that's in the corner of its mouth, it's unless you got the drag completely tight, you're not losing that fish. But don't try to reel them in fast. Just take your time, especially when you're dealing with fish of size, and let them pull that drag, wear them out. Because a lot of people will get the fish on, set the hook, and then they'll tighten their drag up. I don't really tighten my drag up. Where I get my drag at, sitting in the rod holder, that's the way I want it when I reel it in. I want it to be able to pull drag. Because if you got it too tight, I don't use 20-25 pound test line, so it's easy for them to snap that line if your drag's all the way tight. So I always leave enough drag for them to pull some out. That's another key. That like yesterday, that one that was 23 pounds, I'd reel it in 4 or 5 times and it would run out 10 yards. I'd reel it in 4 or 5 times, it'd run out 5 yards. But I slowly tired that fish down to where I had control over the fish. It's just some simple things. So I've been here about 30 minutes. I haven't had any bites, which is pretty much par for the course here. When I come out here, it's either feast or famine. I'm catching them as soon as I throw them in, or they start biting between 2 and 5 o'clock. That's weird, but here at this dam, at the Saluda Dam here in Greenville, that's just when I catch the most fish. It's really between 2 and 5, which is pretty much the hottest part of the day. But right now is that in between time. I got 1 cast is shallow and I got 2 out deep. So we're just gonna sit here and wait. Hopefully I can upload a good many videos today of some fish being caught. And I'm also got me a little micro rod out here brim fishing. Yesterday I caught 42 brim. So I caught enough brim for about 5 fishing trips yesterday. I really don't need to be doing any brim fishing today. I already had 3 bags and the freezer full. Yesterday I made up about, like I said, I can get about 4 or 5 good fishing trips out of what I caught yesterday. So I'm really stocked up, but I had some worms, some night crawlers left over, so I'm gonna come out, I'm gonna try to catch some and be even more stocked up. But my secret to how I prepare the brim is just let them sit out for a while, especially in the summertime. Now when it gets like it is right now, well, it's not that hot right now because it's overcast, but when it's in the mid to high 80s and 90s, when it's just southern summertime, I said in another video I leave them out 24 hours. I don't leave them out 24 hours when it's that hot, because you don't want the fish to get soggy. When it gets that hot, I'd say 2, 3, 4 hours is good, and then freeze them. That creates them to have a little bit of odor to them, but the blood and everything stays intact. If they get too soggy, 2 things happen. One, put them on a hook, you throw them off. Even a brim head, even if you hook it through the eye, whatever. When they get soggy like that, it's sometimes it's hard to keep them on the hook. And 2, I just don't have a lot of luck on soggy, old cut bait. That's why in the summertime, 2, 3, 4 hours, and then put them on ice or put them in the freezer to preserve them. And if you use them the next day, I still consider that fresh. Now, 3 or 4 or 5 days being in the freezer, you know, I don't have as much luck with them. The best luck I have is when I put them on ice after I let them sit out and use them the next day. And to be honest with you, I don't have a ton of success. I tried it yesterday, catching them live and cutting them and throwing them right out fresh. I mean, that's as fresh as you can get it. I don't have a lot of luck that way. I had the most luck when I let them sit out for a little while, where they get to smelling a little bit, and then freeze them. You got 2 things working for you. You got an odor to attract them in, and then obviously the blood and oils that get released in the water. So that's 2 things going for it. But that's what I do. Now in the wintertime, you know, it's kind of hard to, you know, because you can leave them sitting out and they freeze themselves. But wintertime's a little different. You know, I may put them in the microwave for a minute, 2 minutes, and then put them in the freezer. But usually in the wintertime, I'm just straight freezing them, and that's just what I have to do because, you know, there's some days in the winter you can get 50s and 60s, but still not hot enough to get that smell that I'm looking for out of them. But this time of year, a few hours, throw them in the freezer, come out, you know, cut the tail off, cut the head off, and use the head body section. I know people who use the tail section. I just have no luck with the tail section, but that's you know, that's pretty much it for the cut bait. You know, one thing I want to talk about is I seen a guy yesterday. He was out here fishing with live bait. He caught him some brim down in the cove, and I could see it from a distance. And he had you know, I don't know how heavy of a sinker he had on his rod, but he was fishing on the bottom with it. And you know, a lot of people think with live bait you need to float fish. Now you can fish with live bait on the bottom, but when I do that, I like to use a heavy sinker because I don't want that fish moving the line. When that fish hits the bottom, I want it to stay on the bottom, right where I casted it. Had a little bite right there. But anyways, you want the fish on the bottom, stationary. You don't want them moving. And another thing you can do is you can cut the tail off of them. It's not gonna kill them. Just cut the tail off of them. Throw them out there. Yeah, I got something on. There's something hitting that one, that middle one right there. He's just not taking it. Hopefully he does. But anyways, if you're fishing with live bait, you want to use enough weight for it to stay where you're casting it. And I cut the tail off of mine. What that does is it releases a little bit of blood, but it gets them doing some kind of funky action on the bottom where they're flipping around and stuff, but they're in one spot and attracts the fish. You know, I have free line brim before and let them swim wherever they wanted to. That's me out here by myself with nobody else and just one rod in the water, because I've tried free line and brim with 3 rods in the water, and that can turn into a disaster. And by disaster, I mean you'll be re-rigging 3 fishing rods because it will get tangled up in the other lines. So if I free line a brim, if I'm fishing with multiple rods, I'll walk it on down a ways, put it in a rod holder and let it go if I'm fishing with multiple rods. But if I'm live, if I'm using a live brim and free lining it, I'm usually going for flats. Live on the bottom with weights and where they stay in one spot, it's still a good flathead method, but blues will also hit it. But what he was doing wrong yesterday was is, for one, this is my pet peeve and I can't stand it. He was using like a brim rod. That's mind-boggling to me. But anyways, the brim, it wasn't even a brim. I guess bluegill brim, you know, I don't know if it's in the same family. I would assume so, but it was a bluegill. And I mean, this thing had to be right around a pound. That is way too big. I mean, we are not in Santee Cooper here or the Tennessee River. Using something that big, for one, I don't know what size hook he was using, but when you're using a bluegill that's around a pound, I mean, this was a slab he was using. And they got them in here. I catch them all the time, but I don't keep them as bait because the pieces are too big. The body pieces are real hollow in the stomach. Their guts are up high and it's hollow in the bottom, and I just don't get a lot of blood out of it. Now, using their heads, you know, I've caught some off their heads, but if I catch a big slab bluegill, I just throw it back. Or if I catch enough, I'll take them home and fry them. But, you know, hand-sized brim or smaller is what... Dang, something keeps dinking with that thing. I wished it would take it. But anyways, hand size or smaller is what you're looking for. Because he was throwing out a freaking slab. Now, I know catfish, especially when you get up into that 20-plus pound range, you know, they got big mouths. And they may be able to swallow that thing, but that's too big. I mean, that's way too big. I mean, he's going after, you know, I mean, something that big, you know, 30, 40, 50-pound catfish would be able to fit it in its mouth. But, you know, with the rod he was using, it would have snapped it right in half. I mean, he wouldn't have had a chance in hell to get that fish in. I don't care if he was using 50-pound test line. He would not have been able to get that fish in. When I mean he was using a brim rod, I'm talking about a micro rod. I mean, it was... it's just my pet peeve, you know. If you're going to come out here and do it, you know, and you want to be successful and you're tired of not catching them, I understand that money's tight for me, but at least just buy one rod that's capable of getting in these fish. You know, I've got about 12 rods, catfish rods. I've been lucky. I've had Abu Garcia send me 2 free ones. And the rest of them I bought. But like I said, I'm in these rods for under $100. Some of them I'm in them for $60. That's rod and reel. Now that's more on the cheaper end. That's the Shakespeare, the Berkley big game rods, you know. The 2 Abu Garcia catfish rods they sent me, them were around $150 for the rod. I never would have bought that had they not sent them to me. But they are great rods and they are fun to use. You know, they're sturdy, but they're sensitive at the same time. It's a fun fight. But just have the right equipment when you come out here, you know. You know, really, you can go to Walmart and they got Shakespeare. Well, with this one right here I got on my lever action is a Berkley big game rod. It's $19.99. I mean, you know, and that's actually the rod that I reeled in the 48-pound blue. Did just fine. Never even during the whole fight with that fish, never felt like the fish was too much for that rod. So just get the right stuff. Don't come out here with 6-pound, 10-pound test line. I mean, you just it's not going to work out good for you. You know, I've seen people reel in some big fish with stuff that I never would have thought they'd have reeled in, but I've seen more people lose them. So just have the right equipment. And I'm gonna spend the next 4 or 5 days. I'm gonna test fishing deep, shallow, to kind of get a better idea of where these fish are at right now. Even though the temperatures are going up, I don't know what the water temperature is. Here, the deepest part's about 30 foot. It may get to 40 foot. They just did some dredging, so I'm not sure how deep it is now after they did that. It still may be cool out there. I know on the bank yesterday it was about 73 degrees. This morning when I got here it was 74 degrees. So yesterday was right around 92 degrees. So it heated it up a degree yesterday as I was fishing. So 73, 74 degrees, they still could be on the bank. So you know, I'm not gonna say don't fish shallow, but I do think they're starting to go out a little bit, and plus they're bedding right now, so they're not as rambunctious as they usually are, scavenging the bottom, but still catch them. And man, I have one on this rod right here. I mean, it is just, it must be a little 5, 6, 7 pounder, because it can't get the brim head in its mouth. But I mean, it's just dinking with that rod. But just have the right equipment, you know. I'm not even gonna get on the bait. If you want to use chicken livers and shrimp, that's raw chicken, that's up to you. But I still say cut bait is the way to go, or herring. Herring to me is the best bait. I mean, it's the best bait. I just, like I said before, I don't like paying for baits. And you know, I can go get herring at my local bait shop, but it's $9 a dozen. And they're, you know, they fall off the hook so easy. So a dozen may not even last you a few hours if they're biting good. And you might throw 4 or 5 off the hook. So to me, like yesterday, I spent $2.50 on a can of worms that had 30 in it, red worms. When I put them on the little brim hooks, I cut them in half, so that's 60, and I ended up having 42 in my bucket for $2.50. I had 42 brim in my bucket, which I cut in the 2 pieces. So that's you know, that's just a ton of bait for $2.50. And like I said, I did order some skipjack. It's supposed to be in tomorrow or Friday, because I'm leaving late Friday night. Hopefully it's in Friday, because I'm leaving late Friday night. Santee Cooper for me is about a 3-hour drive. I was going to take my canoe down there with the trolling motor, but if you know anything about Santee, if a storm pops up, even in a boat, a nice size boat, it can get nerve-wracking out there. So I'm not gonna take it with me. I'm just gonna fish off the bank. I know a spot down there where I usually catch some good cats. But for the most part, you know, find out what's in your lakes. Is there brim in it, shad, bluegill? If you can catch bluegill, that's not too big. They're gonna want to eat what's in the lake. You know, if you go in there and throw shrimp in a freshwater lake, and I mean I've fished shrimp before and I've caught catfish off of it, but not often. And I always when I go to a new lake or something like that, I'll try to find like a forum on Facebook or on the internet. Excuse me. And kind of, you know, and I'll ask questions, you know, what kind of live baits are in these lakes? You know, do they have brim in it? You know, that way I know what to take with me, or what to, you know, when I get there, what to fish for and use, because it's key to use what's natural to them. And if you go into a lake to fish for catfish and it's loaded with brim and bluegill and you're throwing shrimp, you're probably not going to be as successful as you would be if you had brim and bluegill to throw out there. So that's that. I'm going to sit here and see if I can get this fish to take this daggone brimhead. He's been messing with it ever since I started this video, but that might be a flathead. It could be a turtle. I have caught a shit ton of turtles from this dam area over the last month. Probably 10, 12 turtles I've caught out of here. So but anyways, let me check on this, and I'll upload some videos hopefully here in a little while of me catching some catfish. Like I said before, I got not in this video, but another one, I got a GoPro ordered and coming. That way I can just do a straight video the whole time of me fishing instead of having to use my cell phone. That way you can see me in action, how I bait the hooks, how I rig my hooks up, or you know, rig my lines up, how I tie my hooks, how I hook my baits. and then the fun part, how I set the hook and get the fish in. I would suggest 2 things. A net. The net I got is 30 bucks. Don't go get no small net. Ain't gonna do no good. A net, but I ain't gonna say most important, because most important is the net, but this is a very close second. Man, my hands were tore up for months. You know, we put my hand in their mouth, because they're gonna cut you. So net and this. You can buy these, save you from getting cut up. The net will save you from losing a lot of fish, and having to bend down as much, but these will save you from getting your knuckles and your hands tore up from their mouth. So let me check on these rods. This is Catfish Todd signing out.